Welcome to Single Parent Success Stories, a podcast designed to inspire single parents. Here you'll find resources from self-care to finances to parenting and everything in between. Discover what it takes to thrive. Let the stories inspire you to what is possible.
If we could look at our problems and our challenges as opportunities instead, we're 100 steps ahead of where we were yesterday, right? Because they are opportunities.
Hello and welcome to Single Parent Success Stories. Today's guest is Shauna Madsen. Shauna is a visual artist and author of The Wealthy Peasant, her amazing book about her life story. She is a single mom of 2 girls from Edmonton, Canada. Welcome, Shauna. It is a pleasure to have you.
Thank you, Irina. I'm so happy to be here. I'm so happy to talk about this, the topic of being a single mom. I'm passionate about it because we have magic. I swear to God, single mothers are magical. We have superpowers.
Oh, wow. Thank you. I think we often don't dismiss it or take it for granted or don't recognize it. So, good
That's
reminder.
Right. That's a journey. That's a journey.
So please share with us your story. How did you become a single mom? What were some of the challenges that you faced along the way?
Well, I was a single mom when the children's father didn't want to be a dad. And so I had 2 babies. I had Erica is my oldest girl. Now they're grown up and they have children of their own, but it was like, I can remember it like it was yesterday. The biggest challenges I had, and I'm sure most single moms do, are first of all was financial. How am I going to raise these children? Because at the time, you're thinking early 80s, they didn't have the support systems that they do today, where I did not receive support. $150 a month when you have 2 children is not support. I couldn't find a job that would pay me more than $6 an hour because prior to being a mom, I was a waitress, a really good waitress, but I was a waitress. And the hours wouldn't work for me. $6 an hour just didn't work for me. So I came across this business program, keeping in mind, I had a grade 9 education at the time. So again, I didn't have a degree to prove that I could make more than $6 an hour. Well, we have an incredible talent as women and as moms to create something out of nothing. And that became that's my superpower. That's all of our superpowers if we tap into it. I created a business, and my first business was in 1988. One thing I discovered, and as I was moving through the process of trying to build this business, I was broke. I was digging through cushions to find change, to go to the store to buy milk. I got to the point where I had to pay rent, and I didn't have the money. Rent was coming up. I thought about who could I reach out to? I could talk to my uncle. He had money. I could reach out to my siblings. I was looking for the answers out there when I discovered I got ticked off and decided this isn't working. So I got out a piece of Bristol board, it's a heavy paper like poster board, and a pencil, and I started drawing. And I drew a portrait of Sitting Bull. I found a photo of him in the library because we didn't have Google back then, and I did this drawing, and I took it to an old boss of mine, and I showed it. He said, well, I'm not interested in buying it, but I know who might. And he sent me to a friend of his who worked for CBC Radio. So I hiked over there, and I showed it to him, and he said, how much do you want for it? And my rent was $325. That's what I want, $325. And he reached in his pocket, pulled out some cash, and he handed it to me. And I later learned that, this was all set up by my boss. I mean, he phoned ahead, which is fine. It doesn't matter. What I learned from that was I had the tools at the time to make it right, to do what I needed to do to move forward. And I really, really, it came to me that I could move, I could do anything. And that's what I did. I sat down and I made a list of assets, things that I could personally do with what I had, doing an inventory, and I made a list. And the list was long, and it didn't include going to my uncle or trying to get the children's father to, come up with some money. Actually, they disappeared anyway, so it didn't matter. I was on my own. And that was one of the biggest challenges moving forward. And another thing too, back in the day, there was a real stigma around being a single mom, and people looked at me differently. And that's where, okay, so wealthy peasant, the word peasant in here really relates to how I felt about myself in comparison to what people saw me as, right? They saw me as a lower class citizen because I was a single mom. And I'm sure that stigma still reigns true today for a lot of women that are struggling with, survival. And I've discovered that survival, the difference between survival and thriving is internal, because the more we look to other people to solve our problems or outside sources to solve our problems, we stay in victim mode rather than leader mode. And thriving means, to me, digging deep and coming up with the answers myself. So it took years. I mean, my children were mine on my own for years. And actually, my oldest daughter didn't meet her father until she was 16. So I tell my story in my book. And wealth, to me, is non-financial, because we are wells of information. We have the tools inside of us. Each one of us have gifts, and it's just about finding those, tapping into them to really bring those out. And I feel like I was really blessed with the ability to draw, paint, and I wasn't that great at it back then. I wasn't. I couldn't afford to take classes, my children, to get involved, I never wanted them to know that we were so poor, because we were poor. So I used to tell them how rich we were, and I would tell, well, but Mom, we don't have any money. I said, look how rich we are. Look at, we have a house, we have you're in programs, you get to play the saxophone. My youngest daughter was in ballet. Could I afford those things? Absolutely not. But we had community events where I could go and volunteer, and I would volunteer and you'd get credits. It's like these little stamps you get for doing all the volunteer work, and you could put those towards programs for the children. And that's what I did. So that's how I put my children through most of the programs that they were involved in, swimming and saxophone and things like that, music lessons. So, the challenges of a single mom, we're faced with there's so many things that any mom has to do. But when you're doing it on your own and you're starting from a blank slate, really, because I didn't have the education and I didn't have any money. And those are key pieces, or are they? So it's about turning things around and looking, because everything has more sides to it than just one perspective, turning the lens around, looking at it differently.
You're so right, because we always usually see the negative side of things, the ego screaming when something is going against our beliefs, our values, but we don't see the other side, and everything in life is a duality. There is always a negative, a positive, or one side of looking at things, and another. And in any situation, if we look at it, what positive thing is there now that I currently cannot see? And starting to elaborate on that and opening up your mind to the possibility that there is something else out there.
Yeah.
And finding the answers within, like to your point, oftentimes we go out and seek counsel from therapists, we trust our health, to doctors, we believe to everything they say without any questionable doubt. because that's how we were growing up. We were respecting figures of authority and trusting them more than we ever trust ourselves.
100%. And you said something there that's really important, because I always feel I've been for years I've trained, after I started my first business. It really evolved over time. And for years, I trained new business owners on how to write a business plan. And one thing I said to them, and I still do today, is our greatest tool as humans, and especially as women, I think, is our curiosity. Because the more we're curious we are about anything, we dig under rocks, we lift rocks up to see what's underneath there. We don't just take everything at face value. And I had a friend that she would not make a decision without going around and asking everybody what they thought first. And to me, that gives you such a shallow perspective on anything. And it's also avoidance, really. I believe it's also avoidance, because we're avoiding being accountable and making decisions from our soul or our heart, rather than, instead they're going outside again for somebody else's opinions on things before we can actually move forward.
Yeah. Knowing what you know now, what kind of advice would you give to your younger self?
Okay, well, be very discerning about who you're going to talk to about any topic. First of all, have a vision. Decide for yourself where you want to be. Not just like 5 years is a long time, but if you, Shauna, young, beautiful Shauna, can think of where you want to be in 5 years, with my career, with my children, with everything in my life, it gives me a target. Otherwise, you're going in circles, and you become you become like a leaf in the wind, and the wind is in control of everything. Flying by the seat of our pants can work, but it's stressful, and we don't always land where we want to land. At least if we have a vision to work toward, it's incredible. It's almost magical. The minute we are very, very clear on a specific thing that we're working towards, like a business, like a book, things start to fall into place. The universe seems to rally in your favor to fill in the blanks. You don't need to know the how. And that was a really tough lesson for me to learn over the years, is I don't need to know how. I just need to know what I want. It simplifies your life. And another thing, I guess I should point out too, that I was diagnosed with ADHD back 5 years ago. And I thought, boy, that certainly explains a few things, because I can get on a topic and go this way and then back, and this way and then back. Hopefully I come back to where the question started, but I kind of wrote my book like that too, which makes it kind of funny. That in itself, and there's a big percentage of people that have ADHD. Anyway, the focus piece is, it's really important to know where you're focusing your energies, and starting with the end in mind and working, towards where we're at today. That would be the biggest piece I would have given myself if I could talk to Shauna 32 years ago. That would have been awesome.
I love that advice.
And I would have said, good for you, Shauna, for teaching your children to think abundance mentality at such a young age. It was funny. Amy, my youngest, was 6 months old, and I was sitting on the front step. Eric was having a nap. She was 4. Baby was sleeping. And I was sitting on my front step. We just moved into this new townhouse. It was subsidized housing, but it was a nice townhouse. And this lady came across the parking lot, and she was the mom of my oldest daughter's friend. So there was a connection there. And she came across the parking lot, and she's introduced herself, and She said, must be nice to have so much money. Pardon? And she went on about how, I'm on my own. I've got these kids. I'm doing things that, I'm doing this, and I don't have to go out to get a job because I'm working from home. And I thought, isn't that interesting that that's the perception she has? But it's also the perception, I guess, I was revealing, not verbally. I didn't have to tell anybody where we were at, and there was no point to it. But the point that my point to this is that was the reflection that she saw, and my children grew up in that. It was interesting. They today they have very high standards of. One is has her master's in communications, and the other gal, my youngest daughter, sells insurance. She's a rock star salesperson. They've done very well for themselves, and they've never felt that they were ever poor. They remember different things.
I love it. It's all about perception, and going back to the point, we only see one side of things. So from outside, this is what that person saw without knowing all the details.
And there's a quote I read again the other day. It said, what other people think of you is none of your business. And I like that because it's true. It's their business. It's what they're dealing with. I'm doing a talk at the end of the month, and we're talking about determination and resilience. Now, the story I talk about in my book about losing my courage to paint, it happened when I was working for a company, and my boss she was a bully, and she was a bully. And she asked me to do a painting for her, a watercolor painting. She knew I was painting a mural for another coworker, and she said, yeah, I'd like a watercolor painting, but I want a really big one. Well, at the time, a sheet of watercolor paper, it was $320, and it was a stretch to purchase this one sheet of paper. But I did, and she wanted to come and see. I told her that I'm making some progress on it, and she said, well, I'd like to see some more of your work. And I said, okay. So I got all excited, and she had money. She was well heeled. She lived in an expensive home in an expensive neighborhood, and she was coming to see me. So what I did is I got a bunch of paintings out. I borrowed a couple easels from other artists that I knew, and I set it all up in my living room like an art gallery. And I printed off these little tags with the names and the prices, and I was so proud. And then I had her painting that I was working on my drawing table. When she came over, she came in my living room, and she looked around, and just her vibes were so negative. Anyway, she went from painting to painting and painting, and she looked at me and she said, you've got something really dark going on in there, as she pointed to my chest. I said, what do you mean? Yeah, just looking at your paintings. Okay, well, thank you. And I said, this is the one I'm working on for you. Yeah, that's not really what I was thinking of. And she left. And that was it. It was quick. It was in less than 5 minutes. It tore the heart out of my body. I sat in the middle of the living room, legs crossed, hands in my head in my hands, crying. I thought, what just happened here? It was awful. I doubted myself. I doubted my ability to ever do this again. I thought I felt like a loser within a minute. I gave my power away. I put so much weight into what she thought because I thought she was here and I was here.
Yeah, we often, it's terrible how easily we give away our power and get ourselves into that state to this person who could be just, maybe she had a bad day and now she poured it out all on you, and now you received it, and then you integrate it and put yourself into this.
It's true, Irina. And it took me 20 years to muster the, I can do this, I can do this. 20 years, I let that voice on my shoulder in my head, talking in my, but I internalized it and took it to heart. I took it personal. No, no, no. That's another thing I would have said to myself so many years ago. Don't take things personal.
Yes, it's actually, there is a good book by Don Ruiz, and this is one of the agreements. Don't take things personally.
The four agreements, the four
agreements by Don Ruiz. Don't take things personally is one of them, because oftentimes we assume, and if somebody had a bad day and they came and they told, and it's like, oh, it's about me, but it's not about you. It's whatever they carried and whatever didn't work out in their life. So don't take other people's stuff.
No, that's their stuff. That's their stuff. So whatever her stuff was, it doesn't matter. But
so what helped you after 20 years? What helped you release that?
Oh, well, I started working with a life coach and just working on my mindset and understanding, you don't take things personal, but writing my book, I started it about 10 years ago, really. And just getting things out to where putting things on the table. Where does this limiting belief begin? Okay, so not being good enough. That's basically what the limiting belief was that I carried. Where did that start? Well, on a timeline, it went back a lot further than her. It wasn't her fault. What she said, she said. Those are just words. But that the way it affected me is because that timeline stretches back to when I was a child. And my father, and I talk about my dad quite a bit in here. He just read my book and when with parents saying that who do you think you are, right? How dare you cry? You have no right to cry. Go to your room. Those things build up. And a friend of mine who teaches grief counseling, she said, we start with an empty suitcase as a young child. And as we move through life, we add these boulders of that create grief, their trauma-based instances or reactions, or and that the suitcase gets heavier and heavier and heavier over time. And until we learn how to unpack that, we will never let go of it. And we all know people that carry grief and anger well into their later years, because they haven't recognized what that is. And so that's what I've done. I've spent a lot of time working on myself, and I study mindset, I study spirituality, I write continuously on both topics. And I'm curious. I'm curious as to how people work, how I work, and I'm always growing and learning. I don't think we ever get there, right? And I don't think I ever want to. I think if when I get there, I'm going to be horizontal. I want to stay vertical for a while.
Because we are just like layers of an onion, and learning, like as soon as you peel one layer, you peel another, as you get more deeper into yourself and you learn more about yourself and the world in general. Learning never stops. We can just, as they say, as you become better, you will have different challenges in your life, and what bothered you a year ago could be like a joke this time around. And as more and I call challenges never stop, learning never stop. You just get bigger problems, and with a bigger learning, now you can handle them and you can tackle them, and you can move forward.
If we can look at our problems and our challenges as opportunities instead, we're 100 steps ahead of where we were yesterday, right? Because they are opportunities.
Totally, yes. Lessons, because in life there is no failure. Everything is a feedback. It's for us to learn, to take on those learnings, and then make a different decision next time, make a different choice, hopefully leading us to a different universe, a different pathway on a way of living.
Yes. And one thing that I've discovered too is the more I learn about myself, the more comfortable, of course, I am in groups and in for years I felt that, I really struggled with the imposter syndrome in business because I didn't have a business degree. So I felt I worked really, really hard, and I studied, and I took courses like crazy because I wanted to. I never had the opportunity to go to university because I still hadn't finished high school, right? So yeah, they don't like a leapfrogging from grade 9 into, university business school. Anyway, I don't know why, but I where was I going with this? The more I learn, the more comfortable I've become, the more confident I've become with everything I'm doing, but also as an artist and a writer and creating, that has gotten more rich. We become a richer, deeper, more content, and the creativity just, the ideas are bigger, better, more fun, or as my daughter would say, funner. They're funner.
So tell me, how did you discover that happiness comes from within and that we need to focus more on ourselves? How did you discover that?
Well, I look at the world around us and the dysfunction in our world, the dysfunction in society, in nationally, globally, community-based families. And the common problem I see is shame and blame. Those are the two things that keep us separate as human beings. There is the common denominator between all of us is the fact that we're human. We have souls, we have minds, we have, it doesn't, if we were all blind, we wouldn't know what color of each other's skin was. If there was, how can I put this? I've got a visual of what we're talking about here. Going inside, when I go back to what we said before, is when we have all the answers from ourselves, when we become the very best people that we can be, what happens is there's a ripple effect that slowly reaches out to our partners and my dogs and the community, and we start to attract people that are in alignment with that same level of self-awareness. And when that happens, that ripples out into their lives. And we can't do it the opposite way. We can't look outside hoping that we're going to be fulfilled inside. It doesn't work that way. So rather than going out into the world and blaming other people for our lot in life or shaming people for where they're at because we don't feel fulfilled, turning things around and focusing on where we're at and becoming the very best versions of ourselves has a much greater impact globally. Once we reach, I know this because I mean, it works in everything else too. The critical mass, once we reach a point where we've got critical mass and groups of people working together to support each other in their own individual expressions, right? And supporting that, it's going to have an impact globally, eventually. I hope in my lifetime. One thing I did write about in my book, and it's near the end of the book, I talk about a workshop that I was facilitating, and I was brought in to do this workshop on marketing with an Indigenous group of business owners. And I explained to them, because this is what was taught to me by old businessmen, right, that with old world ideas. I talked about the hierarchy of needs that the psychologist Abraham Maslow's hierarchy of needs. And I talked about how it's structured and how we first have to, look after our physiological needs, and we need food and shelter. And then as we move up this hierarchy of needs, at the top is self-realization. We now become, we can work on ourselves and self-actualize and take our wisdom to the world. And I'm explaining this to this group, and they're talking amongst themselves. This was so interesting. I just loved it. And I said, okay, what's going on here? And they said, well, actually, in our culture, it's upside down. You turn your pyramid upside down and you start with self-actualization. Because, I just got goosebumps thinking about this. That is where, and that was such a milestone moment for me. I took my business program that I was teaching and went, what? Because it was not on point anymore. We're now in a world in business and in life, we're now at a point where people, consumers as well as small businesses, they value personal values. They value people more so than profits. And that's what has to happen. And in order to do that, we have to start with self-actualization, self-awareness, and grow from the inside. Well, I could talk about this all day, honestly. But I learned more in that workshop from them than they could ever take away from me. It was wonderful. It was a beautiful day.
Another way to say that in any situation, we can always learn something, experience something, and then lessons learned and move forward.
That's right.
What do you think is the most important trait to instill in a child?
Independence. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Independence and critical thinking. Independence, critical thinking, creativity. Okay, we could put creativity at the front. Now that you're asking me this, I'm visualizing it. If we put creativity ahead of independence, that would really, that would plant seeds of, they all kind of work together. Yeah. Creativity, independence, and critical thinking. Those are the three top.
I love that. How did you practice creativity with your kids to instill that value in them?
With my children? Yeah. They have so many stories. Okay, so this goes back to what we talked about earlier about our superpowers as single moms. When you don't have any money and you need something, we are very resourceful. So at Christmas time, we couldn't afford a Christmas tree. So we made one and we attached it to the wall. And then they said, well, my friends have a fireplace. I said, that's awesome. We're going to make one. So we did. And we made a fireplace and we painted it and attached it to the wall, and they crumpled up brown paper for the logs and painted those, and we attached those to the wall, and we had our fireplace. So anytime my children, and they still say it today, okay, I know, we just make one, but it happened. They're doing it with their children now too. And there were many nights, I'm sure every mother can relate to this. Mom, I have a science project that's due. I have to build a solar system. Oh, when's it due? Tomorrow. So I have a photo of it too. Erica's sleeping on the couch. She's, I don't know, in grade 7 or 8 or whatever grade it was. And there's the solar system that Mom made at 3 a.m. So she had her science project to take. Yeah. Or, Mom, I need cookies. When? Tomorrow morning. It's my turn to take cookies. So, are you kidding me? It's bedtime. So then I'm making cookies. Come on. Yeah.
Yes, totally get that. Last minute thing. Or sometimes like early in the morning, 5 a.m., I go pick up something because they need something.
Yeah. Or you're going to one of their kids, their friends' birthday parties, and you're stopping and to grab something from the store, and you're wrapping it on the hood of your car as they're going into the birthday party. Oh man, I think, and I put this in my book too, the best job I've ever had was being a mom. I loved every age. And that's one thing that I I think that's a big, big key. And I would tell myself that, mind you, I knew this back then, but anyway, I would tell everybody else, focusing on each moment, because it's cliche anymore to say, oh, the years go by so fast. I'm not going to say that. What I am going to say is each moment is so special. When I think about sitting with my two kids and just playing with them and just focusing on the moment at hand, each moment has so much magic in it. And now I get to do that with my grandchildren. And I have grandma days, and my grandma days are Wednesdays. We sold our acreage and moved into the city, and that's where I am now. I'm only blocks away from my grandchildren's school. So Wednesdays I go and pick them up, and they come back here, and we have grandma days. And honestly, it's when I'm spending time with either my children or my grandchildren, the rest of the world just disappears on me. I don't care what's going on out there. I'm having a good time, and I'm a fun grandma. We have a lot of fun. So I'm doing with my grandchildren what I did with my kids is, you want it? Let's make it. We're going to make something. What can we do with this? What can we create out of this? So fostering that creativity, but loving each moment, and at every age. Somebody will say, oh, my kids are 7 and 8. Oh, I love that age. But it doesn't matter what age people tell me their kids are. I love that age too. Even those teenage years, when the girls are 16 and driving you crazy, oh my goodness. Yeah. I may not have loved those at the moment, to be honest with you, but I appreciate them looking back. First of all, because they're done. And secondly, we all survived. But they're interesting creatures at that age. Very.
Do you have any advice for the teenage years?
The teenage years? Strap yourself in and just yeah. One thing that in today I find it very interesting. I'm working with my daughter and a few people that are having problems with their children and screen time. They can't let go of screen time. And the saddest story I read was a mom that went to a psychologist, and because she didn't know what to do, her child was so addicted to video games. And so the psychologist was talking to the child, and I cried when I read this. The psychologist said to the child, are you thinking, what do you like to do outside? Or she asked the child a question, and the child said, are we still in the game? Yeah, that's scary. So I'm looking at the whole idea around screen time. My kids were not allowed. I had to save up money to get them a Nintendo. Okay, Nintendo 1. And then as the next Christmas, well, I want a Nintendo 2. No, you're good with the Nintendo 1 and Mario. That's it. That's all you're getting. But I really want this. No, that's it. SimCity, I think it is. Whatever, my other daughter. But they weren't allowed any of the violent stuff on. I said, no, they can't do it. But now I see children that are, their screen time is also babysitter time, because it's easier to sit them down in front of the TV. And I remember those days, here, go watch TV. I'm busy. It's easy to do. But when it comes to the internet and video games, learning how to schedule, teaching children how to discipline themselves. Say, okay, this is your calendar, child. This is what you get to do. And you're going to create yourself a calendar, and this much time out of your whole week you get to do in front of the screen. So let's decide what that is, because that's it. Because the rest of your time is taken up with this, and this. So then they're also accountable. They're responsible for how much time they spend in front of a video game, or YouTube seems to be the big one, and those ones drive me crazy. But the advertising they do to children, that's a whole other topic. But my point is I think bringing children in to help them create their own life, help them create their own schedule on a daily basis, a weekly basis, and looking and rewarding them based on, what do you want to do? What do you want to do? And so them setting goals for themselves and then supporting them in that. That's the only way I believe that they're ever going to decide by the time they're in grade 10 what I want to be when I grow up, is they've already been groomed to think in those terms, right? Does that make sense?
Totally. I think you make very good sense and an important point. Teaching kids responsibility of managing their calendar, their life, instead of just relying that parents are gonna just fix it for me and I'm gonna go.
Yeah. That's easy to do. I've got a little sign on my wall here, and it says, do what's right, not what's easy. Right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Because you know what? When we do something, when we do the right things, eventually everything becomes easy.
Yes. Yeah. Thank you. Is there anything I haven't asked that you would like to share?
Oh, where are we going? Where are we going with everything? What do you think? I think that I just feel that it's important, especially right now. You know, you turn on the news, it's scary stuff. To not be absorbed by the what's going on in the world. Who is it? The quote, Maya Angelou. All the water in the world cannot drown you unless you let it get inside of you. And I take that quote as being pretty much anything that's going on in the world, when it begins to change the way you see people and see and how you feel about your position in life, and things are rocky, or you feel everything's uncertain, it's time to shut it off. Don't let it get inside of you. When it comes to uncertainty, guess what? Things have always been uncertain. We don't know what's going to happen tomorrow. It's about making the most of our day today. Right now is really all we have. Right now with you and me, this is what we have. This is what's most important. It's not about thinking about what I'm going to be doing next week or 3 hours from now, right now. And I appreciate this so much. Thank you, Irina.
I think you make a very good point, being present. And I love this quote from the Peaceful Warrior movie. I don't know if you watched. There are no ordinary moments. Everything is kind of special. It's right here, right now. There are no coincidences. Everything is happening for a reason. And the fact of being present, because oftentimes we check off, we worry about the future, we're obsessed about the past, and we're missing out the present. And the present is really all we have. So thank you. You bring a very good point, and I loved our conversation. I could talk to you for hours.
Anytime.
If people would like to find out more about you, work with you, learn more about you, where would they go?
Well, they can go to my website. It is madsenavenue.com. Madsen Avenue. It's a play on Madison Avenue. Yeah. My daughter came up with that. madsenavenue.com.
Awesome. I will include all the links in episode notes so people can click on directly. Thank you so much.
And they can go buy the book.
Yes, and the book.
It's on Amazon. It's on Amazon.
Yes, we'll include the link for the book as well. Thank you so much for coming on, sharing your wisdom and your stories. I loved every minute of it. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Irina. Be well.